It's not every day that I'm willing to drive 2 hours to get to a photography spot, but today is one such day. And oftentimes I find it's really related to like an increase in passion for photography. And that's exactly what's happening now. I haven't really been out with my camera since the end of November when I was in Banff. And I've really just been editing some photos, making some videos, and doing different things like that. But you know, the weather's starting to warm up a little bit, and one of the things that means is frozen waterfalls are starting to get some water back. I don't know if you can really see this, but the snow on top of this bridge is like 1.5 feet thick. I'm kind of surprised it's holding all the weight. Is this thing on? This waterfall is very loud this morning, and I think this of course has to do with the spring runoff. All the snow is melting. It's a few degrees above freezing, and definitely you can see that this waterfall is starting to fill up. So I'm not going to get too close to it. I've got a nice little vantage point, and you know, I think I can probably capture a really great photo of it without actually getting too close to the you know, sort of foregrounds. Really without getting too close to the rapids here. So what am I doing here? Well, I want to talk about shutter speed when it relates to waterfalls. Now, I've talked about this a lot, and usually my answer is, you know, what's the right shutter speed? Well, it depends. And it depends on a lot of things. I think that's definitely true. Depends on how fast the water is moving, kind of depends on how much there is of it, and it depends on your focal length. Depends on all sorts of things. But what I really want to talk about is, does it make a lot of sense to always slow down those waterfall shutter speeds to get this sort of milky, you know, this sort of milky look? Now, as you may have guessed, it's quite loud. It's quite violent, right? Waterfalls are just kind of like this. So sometimes I like to get a little bit of more of the fast-moving water to really give you an impression of what this waterfall is really doing. And sometimes I like to slow it down. So we'll try out some different ones, maybe try out some different ND filters to see where it can slow down to, what kind of results I get, and we'll compare them and sort of take a look at you know, what the different options are when it comes to shutter speed, what kind of results you get with each individual one. Well, I've just taken a moment to set my composition up, kind of adjust it as I need it, and I'll just walk you through that real quick. Really, I like this bridge up at the top here. That's kind of one of the things about this waterfall. I am going to keep the sort of main part of the waterfall pretty central, but I also want to capture this part on the left and this part on the right, and I want to keep the snow a little bit and the sort of water moving down off to the left at the bottom there. I do kind of want to keep the sky because I think whether it's going to light up or not, maybe there's a little bit of cloud cover, I think it sort of adds a lot of contrast to the sort of slats of this bridge. Makes it pretty obvious that a bridge is what you're looking at. And I think without that, if I were to just kind of tilt down, it would seem really crowded to have this, you know, this bridge like right at the top of the frame. So there's a bit of foliage, there's a tree back there that I think help kind of cut down the light a little bit, but I do sort of like it, and the color is nice now, so I'm keeping that in. What I've been doing after that is I've just sort of been going through a bunch of different shutter speeds that I was able to achieve without any ND filters. So what I did was I took my ISO way up to 6400, ended up getting a 1/200th of a second shot. And what I kind of want to walk through is, as the shutter speed goes down, you kind of go through this little bit of a weird period with the shutter speeds, and then it starts to smooth out, and then it starts to get weird again. So let's just sort of go through what I'm talking about here. So I have my 1/200th of a second. The next sort of thing I do, I drop my ISO so that I got half the shutter speed-ish, 1/125th of a second. And you can see on both of these, like, you know, the water is really quite frantic. It sort of shows off, you know, what this waterfall kind of looks like. And as I go even further, one of the things that happens is you get the motion blur, but it's just like a little bit of motion blur. So it kind of looks like the shot was a bit of an accident. It looks like maybe the camera was moving. It's a little jarring. So there's this kind of space in between, maybe like the teenage years. It's just a little bit awkward, hasn't fully formed, and you know, maybe doesn't look very good. Maybe not to everybody. You know, I'm down to 1/30th of a second here. I get to 1/15th. The water starts to smooth out a little bit, but it still has that kind of blurry factor where there is a little bit of definition, but it doesn't fully, you know, sort of get rid of it, as the motion blur doesn't entirely get rid of it. As I go up 1/8 of a second, 1/4 of a second, you know, 1/4 of a second, up to half a second, and then I got all the way to 1 second. And you can see that in 1 second, sort of all of the major structures of the waterfall, what I mean by that is like the pieces of water that are coming down and sort of forming these bands, these ribbons, those have all just kind of blended together into this one kind of large white piece of mass. I don't know. And it's nice in this case because it kind of matches the like lack of detail in the snow that's there. So anyways, you know, a half a second I think is still also pretty good. You can see there's a little bit more brightness in this. I'm not really sure what that is, but there's a little bit more definition, especially at the top of the waterfall. And then again, 1/4 of a second, 1/8 of a second maybe doesn't look as amazing. I think in this case, this one waterfall looks like 1/4 of a second looks pretty good. I've got sort of good, you know, good definition in the sides there, and there's really quite a lot of water, but also a lot of like definition in that water. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of pop on a couple of neutral density filters, go through them, and see if elongating this past 1 second, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, maybe I'll go to 30 seconds, see what sort of result I get with that. All right, just kind of repositioned here. I've thrown on an ND8, which will give me, you know, it's a very, not very powerful ND filter, so it's only giving me a little bit more. I think I was at previously F14, 1.6 seconds. At F16, this takes it up to 2 seconds from, I think, less than a second, or maybe like, you know, a half or 1/4 of a second, that type of thing. So let's just, you know, elongate this a little bit more and see what we sort of get. Okay, so comparing this to the 1 second to the 2 second, you see that actually there's a lot more water, right? There's a lot more water streaks. And really what this means is the waterfall is not static, right? It's moving around. It's moving left and right. The different pieces of water are sort of being thrown everywhere. So the longer and longer that you get that shutter speed, you're going to capture more and more of that sort of you know, busyness in the waterfall, and it's going to turn into maybe a little bit wider, a little bit more, but with a little bit less definition, the sort of water, a little more water streak, right? Again, I'll sort of go through this, right? You've got 1/4 of a second works I think very nicely in this case, half of a second, 1 second, and 2 seconds here. Okay, let's change this up. So I'm going to switch over to an ND64. Really, the difference here is slight, but you can kind of see this one's got a little bit more, you know, you can see through it a little bit more, and this one you really can't see through at all. Okay, so this is just taking this shutter speed down to 15 seconds now. Very much, you know, beyond where we were previously. But we'll give this a go and see what sort of differences we get. Wow, okay. Take a look at that. So 15 seconds. Let's compare that to the 2, to the 1, to the half, to the 1/4. So in the 1/4 of a second, you still get quite a lot of this definition, especially at this top part of this waterfall, where you can really see the water sort of streaking down. As you go up, these sort of little pieces disappear. 2 seconds, 15. Let's zoom in on this and take a look at really what we're getting here. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the 15-second, I really just want to zoom in on this part. I'll just give you a good idea what that looks like. You know, as you sort of go up this waterfall, you still have quite a lot of definition, but it's very soft. And if we go to the 2, back up, right, there's just a little bit more detail. Maybe desirable, maybe not. And if I go to the 1, yeah, they really do, they look very similar, but there's like a little bit more definition, a little more detail there. So let's go down to the quarter of a second, which I think is like a traditional, you know, shutter speed for waterfalls. Who knows whether it's a good one. Look, you still get a lot of busy kind of water flying around, and you get a lot of definition up at this top here, but it's not clear that that really adds to the photo. And if I look at this thing, you know, really zoomed out the way that it's going to be viewed by people, you know, I got this half a second, this 1 second, 2 second, and the 15-second. And the 15-second really is just very smooth. And I think it goes very nicely with all of these hard rocks and bits of snow, and definitely with the ice. Sort of gives you this impression that there's a lot of water coming down there, because there is. So let's keep playing around with the shutter speed. I think I can go even further than this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this ND8 onto my ND64, and sort of that'll give me, I got 15 seconds. It's going to take it past 30 seconds. So I'm going to have to see what it is I can get here without needing to pull out a cable release if I remember to bring one. Okay, I'm going to be able to do 30 seconds. I don't know how great this is going to be, but let's go ahead and give it a try, see where we end up, yeah? There really isn't a lot of difference between this 15-second and the 30-second. Maybe it's a little smoother. Let's zoom in and take a look at some of the details and see what 30 seconds did to it. You know, I really like that. I wish I could compare that exactly sort of side by side, because I still have quite a lot of this definition. And let's go take a look at the sides over here. These are just very kind of milky and smooth in a way that I think contrasts so nicely with this ice. The last sort of piece will be this little bit off to the left here, which, yeah, it looks nice. I don't know. Looking at it in the full, let's sort of you know, see what we get here. It's got to be the 30. That's the 15. What is that? The 2. Yeah. So far, I like the 15-second the most. There's quite a lot of water now. That might just be the randomness of the sort of water going all over the place and you know, getting picked up in this frame as opposed to a different one. But I really do like the sort of amount that this is flowing, because it sort of changes the mood of the scene a little bit. And if you go up to maybe the traditional quarter of a second, it still to me looks a little bit busy. Sort of looks like this, you know, these 1/15th of a second or 1/30th of a second, where the blur just kind of isn't nice. It's a little busy and a little messy. I want to see what I can do about getting this above 1/200th. Maybe see if I can capture some of the water, you know, like freeze frame, that type of thing. So I'll take off these ND filters, and then I guess my job is going to be to crank my ISO way up and, you know, maybe open up my aperture a little bit, see if I can achieve that, that shutter speed. Okay, let's see what we can get. So head back up to 6400. I'm going to go to 8000 for fun. And I'm going to go down to F11, which will give me 1/800th of a second. Really fast shutter speed. Probably need to refocus at this point because I've moved this lens. Let's give this a try. Yeah, you can see actually there's a little bit less definition in the snow. The water looks very tumultuous, but I've been able to capture some of it, sort of freeze frame water falling, which is a little bit nice. What I think I might do, or what you can do with this, is blend this image together with one of the slower ones to just sort of pull out a little bit of the detail of the waterfall. in that sort of water that's ravenously going over all these rocks and things. Take a look at this top part here. Yeah, you see all this like very interesting detail here, which very much stands out from this 1/30th of a second. Such a different view of what this waterfall is.
Okay, so just briefly, here are the photos that I captured. This is the 1/800th of a second, the 1/200th of a second, the 1/125th of a second, the 1/60th. And right here is where it sort of goes from being, just a little bit more like a photo that you would get with your phone to something that's got a little bit of motion blur. And this photo and the next one, these, as I sort of described them, teenage years, this is the 1/60th and the 1/30th of a second. Now, I really hate this photo. This image kind of makes me uncomfortable in a way, and I don't really know what it is. I guess it's just so busy, and the blurry parts of the parts over here are just really, really ugly. I don't know. I don't like it. If you start going up a little bit, this is the 1/15th of a second. I kind of really like this one quite a lot because the motion in the water has started to form these sort of structures, and it's getting a little bit of form, and you still get that busy sense of the water sort of rushing over the waterfall over in these sides, and definitely you can see this major the main stream of the waterfall is just sort of turning into this amorphous blob of white. Let's keep going. Goes up to 1/8 of a second, which I think looks very nice, and 1/4 of a second, which I think has some very good elements, but this middle part, it's not doing it for me. As we continue, this is a 1/2 a second, and this is the 1 second. I'll stop on the 2 second for a moment because I think one of the things that happened here was there's really quite a lot of structure, really defined structure in this waterfall at this point here. Going on a little further, this is the what is this? This is the 15 second, and then finally the 30 second. I think actually the 30 second is quite nice, but because the attention is really drawn to the center of the frame here, and definitely this bottom part, it's just sort of doesn't really look like much, and there's not enough detail in the rest of the photo to sort of make this a piece that you want to ignore. Also, it's right in the center, so you're not really going to ignore it. So I really actually like the 2 second quite a lot. That's this one here. And I think what I like about it is there's still quite a lot of detail up here, and you still really do get the sense that the water is flowing. It's quite a lot longer than, say, that 1/4 of a second that might be, the standard timing for a waterfall like this, or the 1/2 a second. Let's do the 1/8 of a second as well. The 1/8 of a second I actually think is pretty nice. But if I go back to this one, now, I don't know that a lot of photographers would really like this photo, but I like this one, and I like this one. And the reason is because you still get quite a lot of that feeling that I got when I was on location at this waterfall of the water, really rushing down this thing. And there's quite a lot of softness in this image, quite a lot of white as well with this snow, which I think does a nice job to sort of juxtapose, this sort of stagnant and unmoving ice with this sort of fast moving water. Compare that if you go right up to the 30 second, where the water and the snow are really not too different in terms of their level of detail or in terms of their sort of what they really are. They're just sort of like blobs of white. Going down again, this 15th second and maybe this 1/8 of a second. I think I might like this one the most just because it gives you so much of this, the streaky water. There's so much of this detail is sort of brought out of the form of the water flowing through the time.
Well, I'm running low on battery at this point, so I'm definitely going to call it quits. What I wanted to be able to show here was really just that you have some options. You don't just have to stick to that like 1/4 of a second, maybe 1/2 a second, maybe 1/8 of a second range that a lot of photographers will say is the sort of best range for waterfall photography. Because if you want to get something different, you'll need to break outside of the bounds of what you're sort of told is the right thing to do. Now, I don't know which photo that I'm going to choose. It very well may be that I choose the one that's a 1/4 of a second, but it's important to be able to explore longer and shorter shutter speeds for this type of thing, really to explore your options, to see what it is that you like and what kind of different creative options that you can get given the constraints that you have.
Yeah, no big surprise here. I chose the 1/8 of a second image. I guess I'm just a bit basic.
So thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.